Good afternoon, everyone. It's really wonderful to see everyone that's able to join us this afternoon. I want to welcome you to this monthly GLS 363 Leadership Matters webinar. You are in the right place, and we are really thrilled that you are able to join us today. My name is Lida. I'm from Graduation, I know. I'm really excited to be your host today. I think very few people can say that they are unaffected by the current crisis and all the current disruptions in this world. There's really a disruption on every level, and the normal rhythms of our lives has been disturbed. And it's so lovely to have this forum to talk about that and to invite people like Lizel, who's joining us today, to come and talk to us about, how do we deal with this and how do we deal with our mindset with regards to this? We're all somewhere on a change curve. Some of us are excited at times, some of us are scared, some of us numbed, confused on where to go. And we need to figure out where we are at and how to deal with this. Because as leaders, if we can't lead ourselves, we are not able to lead others well. So today's session is really about just talking a little bit more about, how do we lead ourselves better? Because if a leader gets better, everyone wins. So just some practical arrangements for today. We're going to do this in an interview style. I'm going to ask Lizel some questions. I have a few questions to ask her. She's just going to talk to me. She'll switch on her video just now. But all your microphones has been muted so that we don't have any background noise. However, I want to encourage you to really participate. We can really make this interactive, and we want to also get your questions into the mix. So in the last 15 to 20 minutes of this session, I'm going to look at the question and answer section at the bottom of the screen. So if you just look at the bottom of your screen, you will see there's a question and answer section. So you can type your questions in there, and I will ask Lizel the questions that you have added in there. You're also welcome to just type any comments in the chat box, but please don't type your comments there because I might miss them. So just look for questions and answers section at the bottom, and then you can add any questions that you have over there. A special welcome to all the GLS 363 leaders who are part of the leadership development program that we're hosting, and also the success partners. Also have a special welcome for you. I'm really happy to see all of you. Those of you that are tuning in for the first time, maybe just a short summary. GLS 363 is an initiative that we are doing in partnership with the Global Leadership Network, and they're hosting an amazing 2-day event every year around the world. This year, it looks like they're going to have to do it digital, but it's really worthwhile to go and attend it. The thing is, if we attend the summit for 2 days, what are we doing the other 363 days of the year? And that's where GLS 363 was born. So you start by completing a free leadership assessment, identifying your biggest development needs, and then you subscribe to the program, and where you then work on one competency at a time. And you do it with the help of a success partner, who currently all our success partners are qualified coaches. So they really guide you and become your thinking partner through improving in that competency. So you can have a look on our website if you want to know more. It's gls363.com, but we'll include more details in the email that we will send to you after the webinar as well. So just another announcement before we dive in and talk to Lizel. Until the end of June, we are making available a free course. That's the name of the course is Leadership in a Time of Crisis. So don't delay if you want to sign up for that. There's still some time, and we're getting some really good feedback on that course. There's a lot of people that's already involved and doing that. So without further delay, let me introduce you to one of our success partners on the GLS 363 program, and also a special friend, Lizel Stephan. Lizel is a business and life coach, and she's a facilitator at Strong Foundation. Lizel, I'm really excited. You are. I'm so excited to welcome you to this month's
Thanks.
webinar. We're going to do this webinar interview style. So before I hand over to you, I'm just going to jump right in there with the first question. So we're talking today about mindset and how we manage our mindset. So I think we need to start by defining mindset. You know, what is mindset exactly?
Perfect. Thanks, Lida. Thanks for the nice welcome. And it's really great to spend this next hour with you. I must just say, I had to look through all the attendee names and I see a couple of names I know. So to all of you guys, hey, I hope you guys are doing okay. To the ones that I don't know yet, it's wonderful to meet you like this. And yeah, I want to echo what Lida said in terms of just thanks for investing this hour and sort of focusing on you. I think, I hope it's going to be a great benefit. Jo, Lida, you're right. This is unprecedented times. A very relevant topic in terms of mindset. We're trying to deal with a lot of incoherence. COVID-19 has completely disrupted our lives. And I think many of us are sitting with such overwhelming feelings. I've always wanted to use this word discombobulated. And it feels like it's fitting for here. I feel myself, I'm spending so much of my energy trying to fight off brain fog than what I did before COVID. It's like I have to battle with all of these emotions that some of them are unseen, some of them are known. But yeah, I mean, having a third of the world in some form of lockdown or restriction is really surreal. So there's no doubt this has got a big impact on all of us. It feels like a bit of a movie at times. And I think part of the biggest challenge we're sitting with is this was shoved onto us. No, this is not by our own design. And there's a lot of feelings of anger and frustration, loss that we're sitting with. A lot of us feeling that we've lost control over some of our choices, over the direction that our life is taking. Yeah, bottom line, this has had a really terrible impact on our mindset in general. So back to your question in terms of what is mindset, I think it is important that we understand it. It's not a simple kind of one-dimensional topic. So I almost want to liken it to our personality a little bit, or even the concept of our soul. Mindset isn't something that we can ring fence easily. You can't exactly just point to it and say, ah, I see it, there it is. And in that way, I think, you know, the mixture of what makes up our mindset and the way that it is formed is important to understand. I would liken it to a little bit of an ecosystem. Many different elements, each of them playing a very important role in keeping this ecosystem functional and balanced. And that helps us in terms of mindset, helps us to interact and function with the people and the situations that we're involved in. So your mindset is sort of also like an engine room. On a conscious level, it includes things like my thinking, but it's more than just a single thought. It's almost the collection of our thoughts that represent our thinking patterns. And that in turn also generates emotions or feelings. So mindset definitely includes a feeling component. It also includes our filters. So the how we pay attention to things, what we're ignoring. And this sort of helps us with focus so that we're working with things that are important to us, relevant to us. The other thing that it definitely includes is our beliefs, but not just random beliefs like, you know, the sky is blue or things like that. It's beliefs that sort of shape our understanding of ourselves, the world we're in, and the way we are engaging with that world. So these beliefs are things that orientate us, our reactions, our tendencies even. It serves a number of functions, but it basically also just helps us to interpret and understand situations so that we can direct our attention again to things that are most important to us. In many ways, if you think about it, our senses play a massive role in what we're taking in the world. And if we didn't have these filters, we'd be completely overwhelmed with information. So the other thing that belief also helps with is it sort of helps to aim us in a sensible direction, something that makes sense for us, that is sort of aligned with our goals, our values. And again, I think just the sort of the colluding that happens, the partnership that happens between all of these elements is this thing that we call mindset. So yeah, you can understand it's a lot. This engine room with all of its elements are interacting and influencing one another. So there's this reciprocal flow of information and shaping and learning that happens all the time. I think it's also important to understand that we're not born with a pre-programmed mindset. Our mindset is, for lack of a better word, built, or it's even programmed. So it's like one layer of learning at a time, eventually shaping our mindset. So this mindset, our mindset, mindsets, if you want to call it that, is super essential in the way that we use it to help us act and respond. It becomes eventually the host of our outlook in life, our attitude, and it will definitely influence and determine even how we handle people, how we interact with situations, how we figure things out, how we understand and decide what we should be doing. And it's definitely a key contributor to our sense of fulfillment. So, you know, what you said earlier, honestly, the disruption we're feeling of COVID and the link to that with our mindset is massive in my mind. It's unmistakable. We've truly been bombarded with unknowns. None of us have ever been through this. None of us has ever survived this. So there's no story to tell at the end of this that can help the rest of the gang kind of feel, oh, it's all right, we'll be fine. So a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, and it reminds me of Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And I'm going to simplify his philosophy, so forgive me for that, but he strongly proposes that life is not so much what happens to us, but it's how we respond in it. And he emphasizes very strongly that our responses are chosen. We choose how we respond. So he comes and he invites us to understand that we can either deal with things from an internal space to the external, or we can deal with things externally and sort of take it on ourselves. So obviously, you know, his encouragement is take up your freedom to choose your attitude in any circumstance. He strongly sees suffering, challenge, hardship as essential to our journey, and that we can't have meaning outside of those things. So there's no point in avoiding that. We've got to kind of put our arms around it and find our meaning in it. So I think that's a very powerful awareness to sit with as we're challenged in today's circumstances. You know, whether we like it or not, we're in this and we've got to figure it out. It might not be very comfortable, but we have to figure it out. So the other popular reference to mindset is by Carol Dweck. She's a psychologist from Stanford, and I think most people will recognize her book, Grit. And she sort of conceptualizes mindset in two ways. We can either have a fixed mindset, or we can have a growth mindset. So people with a fixed mindset tends to be very focused on the fact that they were born with certain capabilities. And obviously then when they experience challenge or failure, they find it very, very unsettling, because this sort of casts doubt on those certain abilities that they thought they should exhibit in a certain way. But if we've got a growth mindset, there's definitely a more open, a more almost persevering and resilient approach to failure. So we almost expect that we're going to make mistakes. There's definitely going to need to be areas that we improve on. And so we take that feedback on as encouragement for where we can grow more, where we can develop more, if you will. I think it is super important that in a way we acknowledge there's no way we can control what happens to us in terms of COVID, current challenges. We have no idea how the coming weeks or months are going to turn out. We don't know where this is going to end. But the one thing of certainty that I sort of want to give as an encouragement to everyone is we definitely can and we need to manage how we respond to this uncertainty and all. So I do think, you know, a wrong mindset here, if I could use the word wrong carefully, is definitely when we sit with a fixed mindset, it's going to obstruct our progress. You know, people who are very procedurally orientated are going to find it incredibly frustrating. If you are rule driven and you believe that your plays in the playbook is making you an expert, you're going to feel very unsettled. So we've got to sort of shift away from the expert, you know, the well-practiced, well-versed expert, and we've sort of got to become comfortable with we're experimenting, we're learning. We've got to draw on our curiosity more so that we're a bit more flexible. We need to be prepared to experiment. We're going to fail, but we're in this journey together and we're learning and we're growing. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that I want to promote. It's going to create a greater sense of control in some way. It's not going to resolve everything, but it's going to go a long way.
Yeah, sure. That's very interesting, Lizel. I think most of us is not always conscious of this mindset that we have and that we operate with, but it really stands out for me in what you're saying, that we do have a choice, so therefore we need to make trouble to really understand what is the mindset that we are operating with. So, and I think if we are honest with ourselves, this pandemic has really generated a lot of emotions, which we need to respond to. And, it can be very overwhelming. So where do we start? Where do we start changing our mindset?
Yeah, I think with our plans and our sort of direction of success that's been so severely disrupted over the past few weeks for all of us, we're definitely facing challenges today that wasn't on the radar 3 months ago. So our world is literally upside down. And I think there's a lot of questions around, so what does this mean for me? What does it hold for my family? The plans that I had, will I ever be able to sort of rekindle them? Where's my business going to go with this? What will the future hold? How will we recover from this? How's our economy going to recover? I mean, you only need to read 1 or 2 articles from an economic perspective, and it sort of becomes, it's too much, because when will this all end? And I think with that challenged mindset, we're also faced with a vulnerability that we don't often have to consider. Our own mortality is sort of in our face. We're cautious about not exposing loved ones. So that's a very vulnerable space to be in. And with the way that we function, I think it's fair to say that most of us don't enjoy these challenging emotions. They're not fun to play with, definitely not. So, there's definitely something to be said. I think it was Emily Pine and Tony Swatch in a recent Harvard article who sort of said, we're dealing with 2 contagions here. It's the virus itself, which is obvious, we understand it, but it's also the emotions that it generates. And those negative emotions are every bit as contagious as the virus, but they're also very toxic. So for me, I must just start with sort of a bit of a precursor. I wish there was a cookie cutter recipe that I could dish out to everyone and we were guaranteed that it was going to work foolproof for everyone. But there's not a one size fits all solution when we are managing emotion. It's a very unique, individualistic thing. You know yourself, you know your challenges very intimately, and only you are really equipped to reflect on what it is that you have as a resource and what it is that you need as support. But that in itself can be overwhelming. When we feel we don't have a handle on things, to think problems through and problem solve for ourselves can also be challenging. So about those questions also, what does this mean for me? What about my family? Where is this all going to end? I think we need to acknowledge these are a clear indication that we're all dealing with shock. We're sort of in a space where we're facing this unthinkable change and challenge, and it's a wave. So for a lot of us, we need to understand that we are somewhere on a change curve, and along with that will come emotions of disbelief, anger, frustration, fear even, resistance. And so for me, the starting space with this is recognize that you are feeling unfamiliar, unwelcome feelings. It's possibly a mixed bag at this point, and they're mostly unpleasant. So that process is challenging, but accept that these challenging feelings are not your enemy. As uncomfortable as they are, they're so much a part of life's journey. As much as the enjoyable feelings like love and acceptance and excitement, we need to accept these. And again, even though we might not like them, fear and anxiety is a very normal response for what we're going through right now. And we're hardwired to experience fear. There's actually quite a beautiful gift in fear. It's meant to keep us safe. So, when we register fear, instead of sort of resisting that emotion, we can embrace it in the way that we understand it's got a story to tell us. Now, obviously, most of us will know how we register fear. And we're not all going to feel it in the same way, and we're definitely not all going to respond in the same way. So I recently also came across a very beautiful analogy about fear. It's a tea bag in hot water. So as much as these feelings are uncomfortable and it's kind of creating a bit of heat and discomfort, when we accept that it's normal, like a tea bag needs to steep in this hot water and sit there so that the fragrance and the essence can be released. When we sit with fear and we embrace the story of anxiety and stress, and we accept that it's not a sign of failure, it's definitely not a sign that we lack something or that we're not good enough in an area. then the deeper story of this fear can almost unpack for us clarity. It can connect us or reconnect us with what's really precious or essential to us. So I definitely want to invite everyone to not run away from the discomfort. Lean in, as Brené Brown says, to this vulnerability and just sit with these feelings. So what I'm basically trying to say is we really need to recognize and accept our feelings. It's only then that we can sort of move on to the next step. And that might include filtering them and managing them. Feelings is a very powerful catalyst. We've already seen it's part of this ecosystem of mindset. So the more we feel something, the more it's going to generate other thoughts. And those thinking patterns may eventually become reinforced. And if these are the basic building blocks of our mindset, at this point specifically, we need to really pay attention to them. And we can grasp them and grab a hold of them if we acknowledge and just recognize what they are.
Yeah. I agree with you, Lizel. I think if we are able to recognize our own feelings, whether it's fear or uncertainty or, just feeling out of control, and we are able to say, but I do feel this way. I think it's not so easy to actually recognize it. And, but then we know what it's telling us about our mindset. And I think it's sometimes tough. I hear people are saying, oh no, I'm not really emotional type of person. What does that mean? We all have feelings, are you not acknowledging them, or what is it? A lot of time people are saying, emotional means a certain thing, so how do we acknowledge and be okay, because be okay with those feelings that we are feeling and say, it's okay for me to feel fear, and to acknowledge that to myself.
You're saying something very important there. And I think, by association, because remember, mindset is learned. So we build it layer by layer. If we've got associations with feelings, either positive or negative. So if we've been taught that, crying is a sign of weakness, for instance, as a stereotype, it's going to be very challenging for us to embrace crying. We might actually resist it then and resent it, which is even more challenging. So it's very normal that sometimes we've got interpretations of feelings that places a value on the feeling. And I almost want to challenge us all, me included. One of my pet hates is feeling out of control. I don't like feeling frustration when things don't work. So as much as we're chatting about this, I'm super talking to myself here. But we need to see our feelings as a signal. It's a messenger. Feelings, like you've got a dashboard in your car that lights up when things go wrong. So they provide us with information, and their purpose, they're meant to motivate action in us. So that doesn't mean we must act our feelings out, but when we feel them, when we experience them, it's definitely on us to sort of take that feeling and ask ourselves, so what is this feeling telling me about the situation, about myself, about my mindset? We're in charge of managing our feelings. So granted, we don't like feeling out of control. Very few of us can put our hands up and say, oh, I love feeling exposed. I love failing. I think you're lying to yourself. It's not true. We don't enjoy them. Because by association, success is supposed to include wonderful feelings like confidence. And it goes a long way if we are developing sort of our feeling vocabulary, so that we can start understanding there's a massive range of feelings that we could be feeling, and they vary in intensity. So yeah, again, I want to challenge you guys. Sit in the discomfort, lean into it. Don't sort of try and work your way back up this confidence ladder so you can just feel better, because that to me is not really working with a feeling or working through it. It's kind of trying to work around it. So as with any major shock, we need time, we need a process. But like you said, we need to know, what are we processing? So something simple, very simple. Go and Google feeling words. You're going to get a list of overwhelming amount of words. There's something like 7,000, I might be wrong, but there's a lot of feeling words. So go and Google that and help yourself to start putting your finger on exactly what it is that you're feeling. And we need to acknowledge our feelings. Again, we can't work with what we don't accept and acknowledge. So, and again, feelings are often an unconscious mix of things. They happen so quickly. This whole process between now I thought something now I feel something is almost instantaneous. So it does make it quite challenging, but it's still our responsibility to figure out what am I feeling so that I can put myself in a position where I can work with it.
Exactly. I think they're almost like instinctive. And sometimes, sometimes I feel, you just feel I'm in a bad space. You haven't identified that exact emotion, or you just feel irritated, but there's something underneath it. And we need to almost like peel it away like the layers of an onion, And what I find helpful is to go and sit down, and say, why do I feel so irritated right now? And a lot of the time, the reason is not lying in the person that I'm irritated with. And it's somewhere else, but we need to go and uncover that so that we can realize, what we are feeling.
What exactly are we feeling? Perfect. You're 100% right. And I think, again, that's why strengthen yourself by developing your emotional language. There's been a big spotlight on EQ, emotional intelligence, for the last few years. And most of us are a lot more knowledgeable about emotions and how they function and how they influence us. The brain is a phenomenal thing. I mean, with recent developments, neuroscientists are even able to prove exactly in which area of the brain a specific emotion is happening. So that's phenomenal. But that doesn't help me deal with my irritation or my frustration when I'm sitting with it. So, I mean, just quickly, there's 9 distinct human emotions. There's anger, there's disgust, there's envy, fear, happiness, there's lust, there's pride, sadness, shame. And I'm again, as we hear these words, we've got associations with them, and some of them we're okay with, we're kind of drawn to them, and others we feel, oh, but that's not a nice emotion. Neutralize it. Every emotion has a purpose, and every emotion is acceptable. It is what it is. So don't add to the pressure of dealing them by hanging an interpretation on it. So, and feelings can also escalate very quickly. Irritation can go to fury very quickly if a bunch of triggers happen one after the other. Upsetness can lead to heartbroken even. So we're able to feel 2 or 3 emotions at the same time. They don't have to be familiar emotions. They don't have to be family emotions even. They can be opposing. So the encouragement here is definitely build your feeling language so that you empower yourself to label them. Once you label them, it's easier to do something about it. It's almost like it's a personal empathy to ourselves. When we say, this is what I'm feeling, yes, and it's okay to feel this, instead of trying to hide the feeling or shelter ourselves from the feeling. When we say, what are we feeling? I do think we must acknowledge that sometimes it's not as easy to just put a label to it. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So we might not recognize a feeling because maybe you're at the onset or the very beginning of feeling something, but this whole thing hasn't come into focus yet. So it's not identifiable to you yet. You may feel it in your body, say maybe your throat is tight, you feel your knees shaking a little bit, or your heart is beating faster. But in that moment of picking up this physical sign, you might not be able to make the connection between the physical experience and what provoked it. So again, it just puts emphasis on the importance of this language of feeling, but also being connected to your body so that we notice that feelings start as a physical sign. I had a terrible headache last week. And to me, if I didn't know myself like this, I could easily have just said, drink a couple of painkillers, go and sleep a bit, drink water. But I know myself, so I know headaches are a sign of stress. And because I could make that connection, instead of just sort of medicating, it's much easier for me to acknowledge, right, so here is feedback to me. What am I stressed about? And so, one of the other reasons also is you could very well be feeling more than one feeling, and they're oddly fused or mixed or merged. So you might be overcome by that because it is tricky to recognize more than one emotion at the same time. The concept of angry tears, you could be really angry at something, enraged almost, and simultaneously you could feel very hurt by whatever provoked you. So when we're feeling these merged feelings, we sort of have an emotional stutter. It's like we're, and that is tricky. So again, when we give ourselves space, we sit with it, then we can start figuring out exactly what is this, like in Afrikaans, we've got a thing with gekookte bol vol. What is this mixture of what we're feeling? Yeah, and then there's this very interesting thing. Sometimes, and I don't know if you knew this, but there are feelings that cannot be explained in English. So there are definitely feelings that we have that the English language does not have a description for. Ever had that feeling of being chased by something rushed? It's almost like a train is chasing down on you and you just don't have enough room to maneuver. So there's a German word, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but it's Torschlusspanik. And it's
Torschlusspanik.
Thank you. There.
Thanks,
So it's this concept where we're summarizing this fretting sensation of time running out and pressure building and just feeling we don't have enough room, again, to maneuver. So that feeling is likely to push us into some impulsive sort of reaction. And you're going to have to help me here again, Flo, but the sentence or the idiom in German goes, Torschlusspanik ist ein schlechter Ratgeber, which is basically, we get out of German very quickly.
Not bad.
Thank you. This kind of panic is a really bad advisor. And Tiffany Watts-Smith wrote a book called The Book of Human Emotions. And in there, 154 of these feeling words that English just will not describe accurately. So again, sometimes when we try and work with our feelings, it is important to sort of just empower ourselves with knowledge about them. A very obvious thing could also be that you're not recognizing this feeling because you never felt it before. And specifically thinking about children. I read an article this morning saying that primary children, sort of school-going age, beginning, like say, between 7 and 9, are potentially worst affected by this because they don't have vocabulary or a language structure to help them digest these experiences. We chatted to friends last night via Zoom, and they've got a 5-year-old who's completely thrown by this. Her entire world is based on her home life and her patterns and her rhythms, and none of them are the same anymore. So I think there's massive impact on our kids who don't understand. So again, go and look at a children-friendly sort of vocabulary with images where you can help them to sort of start identifying what it is that they're feeling. So I don't know if that answered your question enough.
Yeah, no, thanks, Lizel. But okay, so we're discussing mindset.
Yeah.
And having a healthy mindset and being able to be aware of what we are feeling and what we are thinking, because those are the building blocks, as you say, we might realize that we really need help in this area. So what can we do? How can we practically do something about this?
Yeah. So I think first off, we need the attitude of not being too hard on ourselves. I think all of us want to sort of get back to that feeling of we've got this, we're in control, we can do this. I can't say how quickly that's going to happen for each of us, but let's say we're accepting of the fact that there's going to be a little bit of stumbling in this process, and we're going to battle a little bit. When we do that, we're affording ourselves patience, and we're being very real and very authentic. So I think, again, for me, it's acceptance. It plays a massive role. It doesn't help you're going to resent and resist what you're feeling. That's just going to create a vicious cycle. So now you feel you're not coping. The next minute you're angry at yourself for not coping because you think you should be coping better. And now you're criticizing yourself for not having it together, which just makes you feel more out of control. And so this cycle will end up feeding on itself. And in the end, we're going to get paralyzed, or we're going to just, grab unhealthy soothers like eat too much or go bake something or dive into a television series. If we want to be really constructive with this, we need to work with these feelings. So 2 of the simplest practical things that I can think of and that I've tried and it works for me is, the one thing is try and create a predictable routine that works for you. Now, again, I don't know if you want to get up at the same time you usually did every morning, get yourself ready, dress like you would have if you've gone to work. You've got to figure that out. But some sort of rhythm, like have lunch the same time each day, go to bed at the same time each evening, just create predictability. When we've got predictability, there is a sense of familiarity, and that brings safety. So create that personal safety between your family members. Kind of have a chat about, guys, you know, if this is still going to continue for a couple of weeks. And I sort of, you know, I think the first 3 weeks of lockdown was fun. It was a challenge. We almost set it unconsciously. Can we get through these 3 weeks? Yeah, sure. And we did. But this lingering uncertainty is making that all the more difficult. We want to get back to, I want to exercise. I want to go to gym. So what am I going to do? Let's build rhythms that are familiar, that help us to feel the safety that we need. When we feel that safety, it's sort of going to take that edge off the anxiety that we feel. And my other practical, earlier, write, journal. Make sure that you are doing something to create a space between you and your feelings. Get them onto paper. You know, instead of trying to hold onto all of these feelings in your head and make sense of them, allow the paper to hold them for you. There's no consequence for writing things down. No one's going to judge you. The paper's not going to look at you funny and say, you what? So just put it down. And don't even try and judge what you're writing. Just let it flow. And once we've got that out, I almost want to say there's a couple of questions that you can ask yourself to help that process feel a little bit more constructive. If you're writing about something specific, you can ask yourself, so what actually happened here? What am I feeling as a result of what happened here? What's the story that I'm now telling myself because of what happened? Is there anything that I need to sort of, you know, sense check? What is really true? What is true about me? What do I know about me? And then when we move on to more problem-solving kind of questions, you can ask things like, what is it that I'm learning about myself? What am I learning about the situation? What is it that I'm going to be doing differently? But you can hear all of those questions are focusing on processing feelings from the inside out, rather than trying to resolve them from the outside in. So I'm basically saying, don't put a plaster onto it.
I must say routines are quite difficult for me personally, but I can see what they do to my kids. I can see the safety that they create for my children. So, and we need to realize it does the same thing for us. So
100%.
I think writing is a great way of getting perspective. I absolutely agree with you in that sense. I think we need to almost wrap up to us. I see there's 2 questions already. So, but I have one question. Something that's really impacting on our mindset is all the overwhelming messages in the media and social media, and it's almost flooding us. You know, how do we don't let that noise derail us and our mindset?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, it is super important that we filter. So, you know, again, if we say this, the responsibility that we have to ourselves is based on what we allow and it's based on what we create, then we have to put boundaries in place for our exposure. Look, I'm not saying news or social media is bad, and I'm not promoting that we're like putting our head in the sand, but there's definitely something to be said for being selective. Remember, what you allow into your mind will establish itself over time, and that eventually is going to determine the condition of your mind. So I would really limit managing exposure too much. So pick a time in the day that you want to look at the news, get your updates. Sure, and I certainly won't recommend starting with news first thing in the morning, because that sort of sets the tone for the rest of your day. But, you know, pick things that are going to build hope in you. Pick things that are going to be constructive for your mindset. We're not saying upskill yourself to the tilt. We're not saying that you have to completely put so much pressure on yourself that you're outperforming yourself, but literally just make sure that you're censoring your exposure and filtering negativity in some way.
Lizel, I'm going to just, before I skip to the last question here, I just want to encourage everyone that's listening. If you have any questions, I see there's 2 questions already. Please make chance of, make use of this chance, and please type it there in the questions and answers, and you can ask Lizel anything. Lizel, I want to just step away a little bit from, you know, how I'm managing myself, my own feelings, my own mindset. You know, we're talking about leaders here. Yes. And GLS is about developing leaders. how do we as leaders help people in our teams that's struggling with these things, and how they can help to manage their mindsets?
Very good question. And I think you said it well right in your introduction when you said, when we lead ourselves well, we're enabled to lead others better. So I think, again, if we take the inside out approach, we need to manage ourselves so that we can be available to our teams. This is a time where there's a lot of pressure on communication, and it's so easily taken up by just reality, like problem solving and decision making. But I think people need each other now more than ever. So being available to our team doesn't mean we're responsible for managing their experience of this crisis, but it shows interest. You know, we want to know how are they really doing on their journey. So I almost want to say, be very pragmatic about it and arrange connection times where you're literally just sharing a cup of coffee and saying, so let's look at each other in the eye and let's just say to each other, how are you really, really doing? Every one of us is experiencing this process very, very differently. So we've got very different lived experiences. And with social distancing, I think we miss that connection quite a lot. So be intentional, reach out to your teams, and literally just park the strategies and the processes for a bit and make heartfelt connections so that we know how the other is doing. And having said that, I think most people are very stretched. I don't know about you, but I'm watching my husband and I don't think he's ever worked this hard in his entire life. We're taxed. There's so many different roles that are fused. And because of the pressure on communication, we're being dragged into meetings left, right, and center. We've got very little control over diaries. And all of this is happening in the confined space of our homes. So that's a challenge. We need to nurture each other. And I think validating what you're appreciating about your team. So like really diving in there. You know them so well. You know, if you see someone's gone over and above, acknowledge it, verbalize your appreciation. Every one of us can do with a good dose of appreciation right now. And then maybe even, like, you know, we've all got company values. We've got these visions, and where we might be limited in living our vision out right now, values don't just shift because of a challenge. Sure, we've got to pick up that challenge and we've got to challenge ourselves with how do we live these values in the current circumstances, but make the time to do that so that we can communicate that with our teams as well.
Thanks, Lizel. That's great advice. You know, I'm thinking of something that Craig Richard said, I think 2 years ago in the GLS. He said, we need to say to people, I see you and you matter. It makes such a big difference when people are acknowledged. I know you're struggling at the moment, you know, and just hear that.
Yes. Yes.
That you see them and they matter to you, you know, and I think that can make a massive change. And I also like what you're saying about, you know, company values, because we need to focus on that. That's tying us together.
Yes.
You know, that why and the purpose of our organization has not been affected by this as much as the how and the what has been affected. So if we can focus on that, you know, that sort of takes us a little bit further than just, you know, all the way in which we've always done things.
100%. Totally agree with you.
Right, so let's see some questions. The first question is from Sarah. Thanks, Sarah. How do you create stability in your business in times like this without killing innovation and problem solving or making people complacent?
Yeah, that is a tricky one. And I think it's this ideal mix, which is difficult to sort of gauge once off, but it's this ideal mix between familiarity and security, so safety for our team so that they can think creatively, acknowledging that this is uncharted territory. We've not been here before. And I think an openness to really listen to one another and sort of unpack the resistances and the fears in an objective and a neutral way, so that when we get to possible opportunities, that's not disrupted or defiled sort of by emotions. And yeah, so I think there's simple ways that we can put rhythm into our days. Like if you had a typical operations meeting, have it at the same time, but now we're having it virtually, but maybe change the agenda around. I do think it takes a lot more preparation from leaders to sort of harness the innovation that's required. We've got to prep, we've got to frame some of the thought processes so that we're allowing people to think openly and creatively.
Yeah, thanks, Lizel. There's a question here from Anya as well that's saying, how can you actually answer to your emotion once you have uncovered it? Personally, being isolated makes it a bit difficult for me. My own voice and motivation only carries a limited amount of weight.
Yeah, sure. So Anya, that is hard. I mean, we can so easily get entangled in our own thoughts, and it's difficult to soundboard with yourself when actually what you're saying is you might just need that objective voice of someone else. So I want to encourage you, I see Jock put a comment down here about speaking to a coach, and it doesn't need to be a coach, but sometimes there's so much value once we've sort of unraveled and we've got a handle on what could this feeling be. It definitely helps to soundboard. It helps to chat to someone. So pick someone in your inner circle and maybe contract with them in the way that you say, hey, I just need to get this out of my system. I don't want you to fix it. I don't need you to do anything for me. I literally just want you to hear me out and play back to me what you're hearing. And often the wisdom from others, just that reframing of it can help move us in a different direction. Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, wonderful. I agree with you, Lizel. Coaching is really great, but we don't talk to a coach every single day or just
we don't have access.
Whenever. So we don't have that access. But if we can find the accountability partner or friend, that we can talk to on a more, that's really just someone who just sees something from a different point of view. And what I found is, connecting with some of the ladies in my cell group, a lot of them are in the same position as where I'm at, where it makes me feel just so much better to realize that there's other people feeling exactly the same way as what I am.
Yeah.
So just that also helps to deal with that.
Sorry, Lida. And there is so much power when you think a feeling versus when you say a feeling. It's a different energy. And once we say it, we can sort of step away from it a little bit and walk around it and get a different perspective of it. So talking, 100%. It doesn't have to stay with writing. You just get it out.
Marty posted a question for you, Lizel.
Hello, Marty.
She said, how could one use the vulnerability of not having to answer the answer aced as a leader? How can we be vulnerable together? So
I think that's such a powerful thought. Again, I mean, when we move from this perspective of I'm the learned expert to I might not know what's happening here, there's a good dose of acceptance that comes with that. So for me, on a practical level, it asks that we become comfortable with not knowing. And that is an unsettling feeling. It really is. I mean, there's no way to look at this any other way. It's not a comforting, nice, inviting feeling. So maybe that discomfort can also become a bit of a flag and a milestone to us that we shouldn't overinterpret our own value in the discomfort, but literally just see it as a feeling with a story that's telling us something about the situation, not about us.
I like something, I think it was Crispin that said something in the previous webinar that we had last month as well, about acknowledging that, no one has been in this current situation. We haven't been here, so we don't know. We are in a consulting business. We don't know. We've never consulted in a type of environment like this, but we could think with you. And I think that's what we as leaders also need to do, is to say, come and think with us. How do we solve this problem? I don't know, but let's talk together.
Yeah.
So
I almost think trying to tackle this solo is a bit foolhardy. We're going to definitely need to collaborate more. We're going to need to trust more. We're going to need to reach out a lot more. And we're going to need to disclose more, like be a little bit more open. And obviously that can only happen in a trusting space. But yeah, you're not going to be far on your own.
Yeah. So Marty says, well, so as a team, we can think together of, possibly what the next step could be. So yes, that's what I'm saying. So that's good. Stephen's asking if this would be a good time for to have accountability partners. I think we touched on that, Lizel, but maybe you want to say something.
Again, I think going at it alone is just going to lead to further isolation and maybe even confusion. So it's the best time actually to sort of set up accountability partners, but it needs to be somebody that you can truly be open and honest with. There's no point in setting up an accountability partner for yourself if you're going to be guarded in the process. The whole thing about an accountability partner is that it's someone where I can open up my vulnerabilities, someone where I'm willing to acknowledge my fears, and that I'm willing to hear what comes back at me. And if we're guarded, we sort of, I think, kidding ourselves a little. We're fooling ourselves in thinking we're being honest, and eventually we might actually end up believing that we were honest, but we're not getting to the crux of things. So this is sort of a time to not work with symptoms, work with the cause, aim to get to the cause of what's going on for you. And I think an accountability partner is an absolutely wonderful way of doing it.
Okay. There's one more question here from, I hope I'm saying it right, Tiki. And she's saying that how do you get your team to open up about their true feelings online when you didn't have a good relationship with them face-to-face pre-lockdown?
That is very hard. You know, and depending on obviously the team situation, I think it might actually need a little bit of again, contracting or setting up expectations where we might need to acknowledge, sure, guys, you know, even face to face, we would find these kind of conversations difficult and hard. But we're in this portion of our journey together. We're sharing these responsibilities with each other, and sort of just relate the opening of feelings, invite that opening up in relation to roles, expectations, uncertainties, and eventually broaden that. So we've got to start building trust where we've got common ground. But you can't dive into a deep level of trust and think that that's going to feel comfortable for people. We've got to build it, again, level for level. But you know, things like that commitment to a specific coffee time as a team, even if it's going to feel awkward. But also say, guys, this feels strange. We never even got to this when we were in the office. And I'm feeling really sad that we didn't get to do this in the office and we're forced to do it like this. Good acknowledgements, honesty goes a long way to build that authentic connection, but incrementally take them there.
Yeah, Lizel, I just see in our team, we started to do what we now call it lockdown confessions. Just checking, yeah. And what I did is just actually post a question, and everyone has to start answering that question, you know, and we do it as a team, but we actually really got to know people better.
Nice.
And it gives a nice platform from that informal conversation as a team, to go and touch on someone that they share, because they share some personal stories, you know, and start to build a relationship. But I agree, you know, you need to build a relationship. Yeah. So you can build a relationship online.
Yeah, it isn't the same. There's a lot of dimensions that are missing, but I think when we get over our own discomfort of, I feel awkward seeing myself, you know, we're sort of looking at ourselves from the inside out, I don't like this. Once we get that out of the way, we can sort of focus on what the real issue is, and the issue, wrong word, but the real focus is there's a purpose we're doing this. Let's make that the center point and not our own discomfort and not our, our insecurities in the process.
Yeah. So Lizel, last question from me. We 2 minutes. What would your advice be to the president right now? So if you can, I had to throw that in for you. See, all our questions are done. Just like that. Just a quick one.
So I've got such a lot of respect for him and how he's dealt with this. I am so relieved that's not my portion. I'm so grateful it's not my job. I think it's a massive responsibility. And if I could say anything to him, I would just say, stay authentic, stay real, but stay connected to the people.
Stephen said we should make you the president.
Hell no. Thanks though, but no.
Yeah, I think I agree with Marty saying that we need to pray for him, and which is true. I think he doesn't have a nice job at the moment.
No, 100%.
Yeah, Lizel, thank you so much for talking to us about this. It's such a relevant topic in this time, and I've learned a lot, and I really appreciate the time that you took to prepare and just to share some of your wisdom with us today. It was really great. Thank you to everyone that joined the webinar. Looks like we had about 45 participants. So I hope each and every one of you have really found something valuable from what Lizel said. Please remember to sign up for Leadership in a Time of Crisis. We'll be sharing the link with you. And then also I want to encourage you to go and listen to the Chris Voss webinar that the Global Leadership Network hosted last week. It's touching on some of the same topics that we spoke about today, and I really found it very valuable, and there's a lot of practical advice in there. We'll include the link for you in the email that we send out. But thank you everyone for joining, and it was really great to have the session. We'll see you again next month. Have a nice day.
Thanks to you guys. It was lovely. Thank you. Bye, everyone.